Welcome back to the Morning Blend. Well, our next guest is the co-creator of the hit TV series Cold Case Files.
But Michael Harvey also draws on his experience as a journalist, covering murders and wrongful convictions to write best-selling crime novels.
Yeah, how cool is that? And Carol read this latest one. It is titled The Innocent Game. It's a work of fiction, but it's based on real-life cases, and we are thrilled to welcome Michael to the Morning Blend. It's almost like Carol handpicked our guest today because we had two authors on, and she just reviewed her your book in her last column. Let's talk a little bit about your background, because I think it's part of what sets you up to be such a great writer for these books, because it's not just all stuff that was in your imagination.
Sure, yeah.
You have a law degree from Duke. You have a journalism degree from our big, I went to Missouri for journalism school, and you went to Medill, big rival, at Northwestern.
Yep.
You've done a lot in terms of crime solving, investigating. You've interviewed serial killers, including John Wayne Gacy, which is quite an experience. I think the world is fascinated with detectives and serial killers. Where's your fascination?
Well, why is the world fascinated with that? That's a good question.
And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because as you do more and more of this work, you realize you go into this work with a lot of judgments. Everything's either black or white. Everything's yes or no. But as you go along, you realize that that's just not the case. Everything is very paradoxically, there's good and evil in every situation. There's good and evil in every person, even the most evil person. I've talked to serial killers who have told me exactly how they would kill me if they had half a chance.
Did that freak you out?
No, not really, because you're doing a job, so you're more focused on the interview. But you find in all of these situations that no matter how dark it is, you can find a little bit of goodness somewhere. And in very, very good people, you'll find a little bit of darkness. So, you know, you learn over time to kind of tolerate that and to hold that. And then after you tolerate it and be able to hold it for a while, then you start to be able to write about it. And that's what makes interesting characters in your novels. It's, you know, not someone that's not totally evil or totally good, but has that kind of mix, because that's how life is.
One of the things, I teach a course, The Art of the Mystery, at Alverno, and one of the things that my students always end up coming away with is that actually the genre is probably one of the most moral genres, because it deals with ambiguity and ethical issues all the time. And so I think what's really interesting about your books is that you yourself are thinking in that way. It's not fiction that way.
No, I mean, all of my books, I think crime fiction in general, its history has always reflected the society that it exists in, right back to Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett. And then, you know, when we started talking about serial killers in the 70s and 80s, all of a sudden Hannibal Lecter pops up with Thomas Harris. So you've seen that for a long, long time. For me, you know, all of the stuff that I've done in real life informs certainly the atmospherics of the books, the dialogue, how people talk to each other, what it's like inside a big-time prison, what it's like to sit down with a killer, what it's like to sit down with a family member of a homicide victim.
And that verisimilitude comes across really well in all your books. Tell us a little bit about The Innocence Game, your newest one.
Well, The Innocence Game was written, I was actually writing another Michael Kelly book, my series called The Governor's Wife, which, believe it or not, is about a governor in Illinois who gets convicted of corruption.
Can you believe that? In Illinois?
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
And so while I was working on that, I just started working on this on the side. I teach at Northwestern as an adjunct professor, and in your writing life, sometimes, you know, your life reflects what's around you. And these 22, 23-year-old kids are around me, and they have great voices, and they wear their heart in the sleeve, and they say a lot of things that they probably shouldn't say. But it was fun, and I just kind of got into my head, why don't I write a novel with them as the protagonists? And I set them in the Innocence Seminar, which is a very famous class at Northwestern. In 1999, this class actually got a guy taken off of death row and exonerated as part of a class assignment. They started looking at this case, and it was a very big story, and it kind of elevated the national discussion of wrongful convictions. So fast forward 13 years later, and these kids in the Innocence Game are in this class, and they pick out a case where they think a guy is innocent, he's up on death row.
And it's a cold case.
It's a cold case, right? And they think he's innocent. They begin to dig into it, and they begin to believe that the Chicago police detectives cooperating with the Cook County State's Attorney may have framed this guy. Now, the kids are very smart, but they're a little naive, and what they don't realize is that if you're investigating a Chicago detective and you think he framed someone for murder, you better be careful, because he might turn around and do the same thing to you. And that's kind of what happens in the book, and off the book goes.
And the wonderful thing about the book, too, is it's not just a sort of a legal thriller, and you sort of follow the investigation with the three main characters, but I like the fact that they have some baggage, too.
Yeah.
And what made you decide on that combination of those three particular characters, the two men and one woman?
Well, you know, I don't really plan anything out. I mean, a lot of people ask me this: do you plan out the novels? Do you plot them, and do you know what's going to happen? And I don't. I just start I just start somewhere, and off it goes. And it just felt like, as I created these protagonists, that the chemistry between them felt really good and really authentic. But they really weren't based on any real people. It just felt really authentic, and I like them to each have a little bit of a backstory.
And that comes that they do.
Yeah, and because in real life, that's how life is, and you learn the backstory of people bit by bit. No one sits down and tells you their whole story. So,
Right.
you can know someone for 20 years, and all of a sudden one day you'll be like, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you get it in nuggets.
Yeah, you get it in nuggets, and that's kind of how the book is.
I think as a society, we're fascinated by killers because we can't imagine doing something like that. And I think particularly with serial killers,
Yes.
people who do it, maybe not just in a heated situation or self-defense. Just really quickly, why, in your opinion, after talking to serial killers, what is it about killing people that drives them to do it, to commit more crimes?
Yeah, well, serial killers are a very small group of killers. I mean, when you talk about the whole set of killers, it's
and
a very
I think
small
that's
group.
part of the fascination.
Yeah. They do it for ego. They do it for control. It's about ego. It's control. All of the ones that I've met have had either been physically or sexually abused as children. Interestingly enough, I've also done a lot of work with prostitutes, and they have the same kind of dynamic in their life. They've always been, everyone that I've ever met, every serial killer and every prostitute I've ever met has either been sexually or physically abused as children. But it twists people in different ways. And for these guys, it's about power, it's about control, it's about ego. They often talk about their victims as if they're just things, like a cup. And they'll use the pronoun it instead of he or she when talking about victims.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And you have some two signings that are coming up.
Yeah.
That if people want to chat with you more about that and about this great new book that you have out.
Yeah, I'll be at Mystery One at like 5 o'clock, and then I'll be.
And then you're going to Boswell Books at 7:30.
Yes.
That's fantastic. You're an interesting guy because I also read you own an Irish bar in Chicago
own an
called the
Irish bar.
Hidden Shamrock.
We need to go down there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the road trip.
If you're in Chicago, give me a call.
All right.
You'd
Buy
be an
you a pint.
interesting bartender to have a conversation with, that's for sure. Great to meet you. Thank you so
Nice to
much.
meet
Thanks
you,
for having me.